Okay, maybe we can start on time and have a good start of this session. I will continue to admit everyone who is coming a bit later, but let's not take time out of this valuable time we have with Mia today. So welcome everyone and welcome Mia. It is my pleasure to kind of welcome you in our WOBA community, and it's lovely to see you here. For everyone who doesn't know, Mia is sorry, admitting many people who are coming in. Mia is a psychologist, psychotherapist, and executive coach, and she actually holds a PhD in women leadership. So I think she's the right person to talk today with us. Not to take more time, just welcome again. And just from my side, I would like to invite you all, whoever is in position to turn on the camera. That would be lovely because it's kind of easier and livelier conversation whenever cameras are on, and everything else I will let Mia tell you. But as always, we invite you to kind of engage in this conversation, ask questions. If you're not in position to talk, you can put them in chat, and I will let Mia know what were your questions. So Mia, please begin. It's lovely to have you here today.
Thank you, Nevena. My favorite topic. So I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to talk about women leadership. Yes, I would highly appreciate if it is possible for you to turn on cameras, because I'm a psychotherapist. I like to talk to people and not to just lecture them. So I was thinking how to start this session today, and I really want to believe this is more like a session than a lecture, and I want to invite you to be part of it. And I just took this look into my whole career path, my professional path, and I realized that this stereotype, there are many stereotypes about women, but there's also this one stereotype about people who study psychology. And it says that people who enroll and study psychology usually are trying to solve their own problems. I don't know if you heard about it. It's a very common thing. In my case, that's not stereotype. That's valid. That's true. I really wanted to study and to explore psychology with this intent to understand myself better and some struggles I've had. So I started my first part of my education was on the topic of dating assertiveness and how to be assertive when we are dating. Of course, I mean, what are the biggest problem in your 20s than dating? So I really dived into this topic and I read everything about it. And my, kako se kaže, diplomski rad, I forgot. Nevena.
I don't know. I forgot as well. It was
no
a long time ago.
Is it thesis or something like that?
Yeah, like my first thesis on the first part of education was on dating anxiety. Then in my 30s, I explored sexual assertiveness, which is extremely important for women as well. And then as I enrolled into the business and I started developing my own company, of course, I got my PhD in women leadership, where I really talked and explored how women can be more courageous when it comes to negotiating, because that's one struggle we really have. And one thing I learned from my PhD is that imposter syndrome is a huge topic for women particularly, because we really tend to be too humble, and humble is okay. But the problem is when we become very in this self-doubt mode, where we question everything we do, when we don't take really credits for good things that we do. And when I try to understand what would be the best definition of imposter syndrome, I understood that it's when you have successful women, and when I say successful, I mean you have evidence that you really succeeded in some areas, like you have accomplishments which are objective, but still you don't feel like it's something that you own. You don't take the ownership over your success. And the first element and the first, I would say, sign of having imposter syndrome is over preparing. So today I did something totally opposite. I didn't prepare for this session, and I apologize in advance, which is also one thing women with imposter syndrome do a lot. They apologize a lot. So now it's me demonstrating what it feels like to have imposter syndrome. When I got my PhD and I really spent 10 years of my life exploring women leadership, I was invited to talk about it in Tampon Zona. It's a very famous and very popular podcast here, feminist podcast here in Serbia. And I decided to prepare myself for this conversation and to read my PhD all over again, as if it is possible just to forget it before I start conversation in this podcast. So these are just elements of imposter syndrome. I see some of you which turned on cameras that there is some nodding. So it seems to me that you really recognize yourself in this part of me sharing about my imposter syndrome. So today I do have a presentation. I did prepare a little bit, but I would really like you to feel invited to ask questions, to share your insights and experience. I love science, but science doesn't mean much to me if it's not really something I can apply in experience, in our practice, and so on. So let me start with the presentation, and please feel free to jump in anytime you feel like I did find a topic where you can relate to. So yeah, today we are talking about psychology of courage and some ways how to overcome these doubts and how to really unlock our potential. It's a huge topic, and my goal today is just to really encourage you to self-reflect and maybe to leave this session with some insights, maybe some tools which you can easily apply. When I talk about courage, I really love this quote from Brené Brown. I quote her very often, that vulnerability is not winning or losing, it's having courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. And whenever I talk about courage, I always think about this concept of vulnerability. And at this point, I would like to encourage you to think about 3 courageous acts you've done in recent period. It can be in business area, but it can also be in your private area. Like if you stepped into the new role, professional or private, something happened where you really had to leave your comfort zone. So if you think about these courageous acts, I would really like you to have in mind maybe 1 or 2. And now if I tell you these 3 words and just keep them in mind, maybe even write it down. And these 3 words would be uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. So let me repeat it. Uncertainty, meaning that you are in this area of unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. You're just there hoping for the best and doing your best. So it's uncertainty. The second one is risk. There is no guarantees for the preferable outcome. So you do your best, but there are no guarantees. And the third one, emotional exposure, meaning that some people will see how you feel. You will show your emotions. These 3 elements are what we call vulnerability, what Brené Brown used to really define this concept of vulnerability. And now when you think about those courageous acts, let me ask you if there is any of them that excludes some of these 3 elements. Probably not, right? Whenever we are courageous, we are swimming in this uncertainty, no guarantees, and possibly we will feel many different emotions, which tells us to be courageous really means to be vulnerable. These 2 things are very connected, which is totally different from how we perceive courage in this modern society. Very often we say, I will be courageous if I'm fearless, but quite the opposite. I'm courageous when I embrace all these very unpleasant feelings and states of uncertainty and taking risks. So I would really like you to invite you to think about courage in a different way, meaning that when we are vulnerable, we are courageous. And of course, this is a lovely part of this speech, but there is a bit tricky thing about this whole topic, because for women, it's not easy to be courageous because of some stereotypes and some, I would say, factors in our society. So why is it harder for women to be courageous? There is this double-bind dilemma, and this is what I explored in my PhD thesis. Whenever women are assertive, they're very often penalized for being assertive. So there are some studies even saying that women are not assertive because when they are, they usually get less because they asked for more. There's this great book, Women Don't Ask, where there are so many experiments, so many studies. If you read it, you will be very angry, because it tells us that women that really try to be assertive very often are perceived as not very cooperative, not warm, not suitable colleagues, and so on. And the reason why is this so is because there, of course, and I'm pretty sure you're aware of it, there are many stereotypes about what it means to be a woman in our society. And there's this first experiment a few decades ago. Virginia Shine conducted this huge study where she asked thousands and thousands of participants in this study, what does it make in this society for someone to be perceived as a good man? And then all these participants agreed on a few elements, saying that to be a good man in our society, it means to be very decisive, to be brave, courageous, assertive, directive, to really be goal-oriented. Okay? So then they asked, okay, what does it mean to be a good leader? And all these people said totally same things like they said for the man. It means that it's totally same: assertive, directive, courageous, brave, and so on. Then they asked, okay, so, and what does it mean to be a good woman in our society? And they said totally opposite things from man and leader: to be warm, to be sensitive, to be empathetic, to be communal, to really be around others' needs, and to be really kind. So here you see that when you are a woman and then you try to be a leader, then you are very often perceived as less of a woman. And this is the reason why many assertive women who try to be assertive and courageous are very often in business perceived as man-like, not feminine enough, too masculine, too cold, very selfish, and so on. So before we move on, I would really like now to invite you into this discussion, because this experiment has been conducted a few decades ago. And in my PhD study, I got very similar results. And what was quite appalling for me is that I got these results from young generation. So from people that from whom I expected to be more advanced in their thinking, but still they told me, and I literally got these kind of answers: women are for the kitchen and men, they're for the business. So I got these stereotypes few decades after this first experiment was conducted, and I wonder if this is your experience as well. So any thoughts here, any insights, someone that would like to share, or maybe in chat if that's easier for you?
Well, I think that we would all agree on this, that successful and assertive women are perceived as, I'm going to use maybe a harsh word, but as bitches.
Mm-hmm.
So not very warm, not very, like you said, feminine, or expressing and showing feminine qualities. And I would just like to mention, you probably know it, but I have read some time ago also some sort of experiment or something, where to a group of students, male and female, CV was presented. It was a woman, and all the qualities were written. All her qualities were written down. But to one group of students, the name of the person was female name, and to the other group of students, the male name was given.
Yeah.
And the question was, would you like to work for or with this person? When the name on the paper was man's name, everybody said, oh, great, yeah, we would like to work with them, both female and male students. And when a female name was written on the paper, everybody was totally appalled by that person.
Yes, thank you for sharing this, because there are many variations of these kind of experiments. And what was quite a negative surprise for me is that we have very similar things in academic context, which is familiar to me, but also in tech context, which is also very familiar with me because I work a lot with tech companies. So here are two examples. In academic context, when you leave your, let's say, report from an exam, and it's totally same report, and you give it to professors, but the one is from Maria and the other is from Dennis. Constantly it happens, and very often, that better grades are given to the male person in this example. And of course, you could only imagine how I was very angry when I found out about these studies. But also, on the other hand, we have also examples from tech companies, GitHub, where people share some solutions, codes, and so on. And the same solution given from the person where we know that she's a woman is evaluated not as good, but the same solution from the man is quite okay. So we see that these stereotypes are still here, they're still alive. And what was one assumption from which I started my PhD study was that we need to strengthen women to be more assertive. It turned out I was totally wrong, because women are already very empowered. They are already assertive. They have all these traits to really say that they are courageous women. And you will see that soon when I say a bit more about my PhD study. But just to jump into the end of it, what I learned is that we don't need to empower women anymore. I mean, of course, we need to talk about it, but what we need more is to really change the system, because I can go to a bunch of trainings to become more assertive, and then I come to company and I don't get a raise because I was assertive. And it happens. We have also these kind of examples in many studies, because women should wait to be acknowledged and get raised. This is how stereotypes works. If she asks for it, well, that's the proof that she doesn't deserve it. You know, it's a very tricky thing when we talk about stereotypes. Any other insights here, or maybe some experiences you would like to share?
Well, I would ask a question, or maybe ask for the opinion. In the case of these energies, so it's well known that we divide them on the masculine energy and feminine energy. Me personally, I don't believe so much in different energies, and I don't refer them to as masculine or feminine, because I think all of us have both in some proportion. But how to maybe approach men who are not willing to accept the masculine energy coming from a woman. Because in this discussion about the race, I think that it's not so much about the courage from a woman, but it's giving them the energy that they are also giving out, and how do they react then, and how to tackle this approach. Because then they shift to, okay, now I need to speak to you as to a man, and at the end of the day you are a woman is sitting across from me, so how to tackle the men when they are approached with the same energy as they are giving out?
Thank you so much for this question, because it's extremely important, and it is something I tackled through my PhD study, through this concept called androgyny. It may sound weird, but it's really about having both aspects of both genders in our behavior. I also don't believe in female and masculine energy, especially that concept of energy. I really have a problem with it, because it seems to me like it's some kind of biological thing, like it's given to you and then that's how you are. We have a bunch of behaviors in our functioning that in our society are defined as masculine and feminine. Androgyny is really behaving in both ways, meaning that you can be a woman who is really aligned with those stereotypes, what it means to be a woman. Like you can really be kind, empathetic, nurturing, very collaborative. And it's great. I mean, all these skills are extremely important and they're essential when it comes to business. But beside that, you can have all these elements of what we call and what we define as masculine, to be very fierce, to be decisive, assertive, and so on. So when you as a woman have both of these, this is what we call in social psychology androgyny. Also, you as a man, when you are androgynous, then you're also kind, but also very decisive. Your question is how to approach to those who are not willing to allow us women to also have these masculine aspects. Well, there is nothing much we can do for others to accept us, but what we can do, and there are some, I would say, some ideas, is to try to be as androgynous as possible, okay? Because that way, like you said, we have both in us, and this is what helps us to really be total in a psychological way and more adaptive. So for example, you will adjust your behavior according to the situation. So sometimes you will be more warm, but it's not because you are a woman, but because you learn that it's the best way to be in this kind of situation. In some other, you will be more decisive. So for women and men, it's better not to be only masculine or only feminine, but to be androgynous. Does this make sense to you? I mean, I know I didn't give you an advice because it's hard to give you an advice. I gave you more of this new perspective, how to behave.
Well, yes, in a way it did help, but it wasn't more in a way that I need help with this. I think that men are not capable to handle this approach.
True.
And they always then lean towards the fact that we are women. Now it can be coming and asking for a raise or maybe a promotion in work or something like that, but it can also be a part of a business meeting where we are all coming together and someone says, and hey, do you want some coffee? And they look at the first woman sitting there, like it's a woman's job to be arranging the coffees. And if you give them a response, which a man usually would give them, like, I'm not, a waiter, or I'm not bringing you any coffee, then their response is also, like strange. And usually towards another man, they wouldn't have any response, but they would comment something in a way to maybe diminish you in some way. So it's more of a how to bring awareness in their world or in our togetherness for them to understand, hey, this is my approach, this is my response, and accept it. You know, I'm not being rude, I'm not belittling you, or I'm not disrespectful, but it's just my answer to you, and accept it. Whatever the context may be, you know, asking for a raise, asking for promotion, or at the end of the day, coming down to sit in a meeting.
What you're sharing now is a very common problem. I will share with you one story. It will maybe seem like a funny story, but it really resonates with what you just shared. I was talking to this lady. She's a CEO, huge company, very successful woman. Let's say that she's called Anya. And she went to make this, she was expecting some team to come to her company, and there were 4 of men who were coming to really make a good deal to negotiate about huge business. So they came, they entered into this conference, she showed up, and some of them said, can you please bring us 4 coffees? So they were not aware that she's CEO and she's going to sit for the negotiation table. And what she did is that she made 4 coffees, gave coffee to each one of them, sat at the main side of the table, and she said, they said, and please can you tell Mr. Anya to come? And then she sat and she said, I am Mr. Anya, and we can now start this meeting, you know? So yeah, there's so many examples of it. I went to so many companies for meetings, and even with people on C-level, whenever there was a woman, she was the one serving coffee. Your question refers to something for which we don't have an advice. We need a totally different systematic approach to genders in business. So it's more of procedures, regulations, law, and organizational culture that will tackle this kind of problem, and not one woman being too assertive or assertive enough, because there is not something like too assertive, to say, yeah, I'm Mr. Anya and I will talk to you today. Because then again, she was probably perceived as not the right person for that place, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Any questions for which I will not have an advice? Okay, let's move on. So when we talk about imposter syndrome, I usually say that imposter syndrome is internalized stereotype about what women cannot do in our society and in business, okay? And when we talk about imposter syndrome, there are 5 types of imposter syndrome. And I will go through each one of them, maybe with some examples. Like if you're this first type of imposter syndrome, perfectionist, then you will feel like a failure if anything is less than perfect. People who have this type of imposter syndrome, they are trying to make perfect circumstances in their own body. Like, I really need to feel ready. And then you never feel ready. You have all these high expectations of how you will feel and how you should feel to start a new challenge, to ask for a new project, to ask to for the promotion or anything. So you will wait much longer than it's necessary because you really feel everything needs to be perfect. Then there is this superwoman imposter syndrome, people who really overwork to prove their worth. So very often I see that in psychotherapy and in coaching, when women try to be perfect as a wife, mother, leader, manager, entrepreneur, they really try to not balance, but to really succeed in each one of these roles. And they're not aware that there's just there is not that much energy, and very often they're the first who will end in burnout. Okay. The natural genius is the person who feels like an imposter if something isn't mastered immediately. Very often we will say for these people that they have fixed mindset. there's some kind of intelligence, talent, some kind of special gift I should have to really be good in business. And if I don't have it, I will know if I don't succeed immediately. On the first struggle or frustration in doing, for example, a new task, once you face the struggle and frustration, you give up because you use that frustration as a proof that you don't have that special something. So very often I say to my clients that natural genius is the person who thinks of people as like Steve Jobs, like you should be Steve Jobs, that kind of geniality and creativity that you're just born with it. Okay. Then we have this soloist or someone who is extremely individual, who struggles to ask for help and seeking help perceive as weakness. And these people, of course, are also like Superwoman, those who end up in burnout because it's really hard to work and never ask for help. And the expert, well, I'm the expert on being the expert imposter syndrome. That's my thing. It's the feeling that you always need this one book, one course, one new education, and so on. I know that at this moment, I'm creating the course for imposter syndrome and how to understand your imposter syndrome. And while I was preparing this course, and I really know a lot about imposter syndrome, I was still like, I just need one more book to start. I just need one more course to go, and then I will start doing my own course. So as you see, in each of these 5 elements, there is always some kind of condition which you need to fulfill so you could start your journey. And then these standards are so high that once you succeed, very soon you're putting that bar a bit upper, okay? And the thing with imposter syndrome is that even when you do succeed, you don't feel proud, you don't feel happy, you don't feel excited. You just feel like it's a relief. This time I didn't fail. This time I didn't do something which will reveal that actually everything I've done in the last 15 years is just I was lucky, or I was charming, or people liked me, and so on. So before we move on, do you see yourself in any of these 5 types of imposter syndrome? So let me share mine. I'm this soloist. I really tend to be too individual when it comes to business, and I learn now to share responsibilities, to ask for help, to really be a team player more than this individualist. And I'm also an expert. I always feel like there is one more book, and I will be ready. What's yours?
Do we have to pick one?
Of course
I
not.
kind of see myself.
Don't be frightened if you find more than 2 or 3. Yes. So what's your type? Let's get to know each other.
I would say that aside of the one asking for help, I see bits of pieces in everything, but if I have to choose, it would be definitely genius and expert. These 2 are kind of.
Thank you, Marina, for sharing. So 2 types like me. Okay, who has more?
Yeah, I believe I have all of them. It's been really, and it's been bothering me for my entire life. And that's why I've been studying this imposter syndrome for quite a while now. And this feeling, I used to have this feeling all the time that it is just a matter of time. That's for people to reveal that I actually am worth nothing, regardless of what I do and how much I achieve. It's just a pure coincidence or luck, because at first I don't know everything, like the expert syndrome. I don't know everything, therefore I'm just an imposter. Soloist, that's still very active. I don't ask for help. I do everything alone. natural genius as well, connected with the expert. I need to be like the best of the best to be aligned with everybody else. And this, yeah, perfectionist, superwoman, yeah, everything, just everything. And what helped me to cope with this constant feeling of not being of being an imposter is really looking at my achievements, and then looking at others achievements of other people, and observing them as people, and really making sure that we are all the same. It's not that everybody else is better than me.
Yeah.
Nobody knows everything. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this, and welcome to the club, Imposter Club. There's one thing I learned in last 15 years, because I started with exploring perfectionism, and perfectionism led me to imposter syndrome. And perfectionism in this very unhealthy way, like I explored it through psychotherapy I practice, is this idea that your whole worth is based on how you accomplish things. So it's really conditional self-acceptance. I value myself depending on how successful I am in, let's say, this workshop or some training I did this morning. So basically, having this formula of self-worth means that when I get up in the morning, I'm not sure until the end of that day that I will earn self-worth. It really depends on your feedback today, okay? So if it all goes well, then I can just go to bed and feel peaceful because I earned myself a self-worth for this day. And what I'm trying to do, and it really sometimes it works, sometimes not. I know it's something that's very useful when I do with my clients, is to try to redefine success. You know, because it's not our fault that we think this way. I have a daughter, she's 10 years old, and she came from school a few weeks ago, and she got, we call it in Serbia 1, and 1 is the worst grade, which means she's insufficient. So it was not said you should do that to improve that, and these are some instructions, but she was insufficient in total. So this is how we grade ourselves from schools. And then if you just take a look at social media, you have like your worth is based on likes and so on. So we are really learn to think that way, and we have to unlearn that and find our own formula, what it means to be successful. So what I learned when I talk to people who have imposter syndrome, and when I take a look at my own experience, is that for me, success in some days could be just that I walked a little bit, that I went to Košutnjak, to the wood, and just stay there for a while, or that I just spend the day doing nothing. That could be successful for someone who is having imposter syndrome. So one thing is for sure, the more you succeed, the more you have imposter syndrome. It doesn't go away because you have more accomplishments. It's bigger the more accomplishments you have, because you keep telling yourself, well, this is just one time that I managed, but that total failure, final failure is waiting me around the corner, and it will be that total proof that I actually don't know anything. So it's not more accomplishments, it's more rest, play, just to try to be more spontaneous, some things that are not something we can actually put in agenda, like weekend meetings and business things. So any thoughts here on this new definition of success? I would like to invite you to find your own. I know, I hear someone.
Well, I fully agree with your definition, because everything starts with definition. If we define success in that way, definitely we are not going to be successful if it's the level it's too high. So I really fully agree the different definition.
Thank you.
I would just hi to everyone. So sorry, I don't have a camera available at the moment. But beside this perfectionist and soloist, I would say, I strongly feel this superhuman.
I understand.
And the thing is that there is a strong belief that whatever I can do by myself without asking any help, that I am more strong.
Yes, I'm competent when I do things on my own. So that's also
And
one definition of success.
Yes, and it's not only on the business field; it's also in private life.
I know.
So once I can do everything by myself, then I'm feeling the power.
Yeah, thank you, Natasha, for sharing this. Now I would like to tackle this also extremely important factor in developing imposter syndrome, and that's the context. So we said that there are so many stereotypes, and I said that imposter syndrome is very often internalized stereotype, gender stereotypes about how women should behave. So when you have this context that tells you you're not capable for sport, business, leadership, whatever, because you are a woman, and someone keeps telling you that, well, it's just a matter of time when you will believe it yourself. Okay, so when we talk about imposter syndrome, we should be very cautious, because that's not psychological trait of women. Let's try not to what's the right word, to really put that in a context of personality. Let's put that in the context of system, to really contextualize it, because not many men have imposter syndrome, and us having imposter syndrome, that's not a biological thing, that's a systematic thing, because sometimes we just believe in those things that we hear. Okay, and this was what I tried to explore through my PhD study. What happens when women are aware of these stereotypes? Does it help them to be better in a negotiation? Okay, and let me share with you what I learned from my PhD study. I examined all of these psychological factors. So I measured self-efficacy, believing in one's ability to achieve goals. I always like to talk about self-efficacy as alternative to self-confidence and that very, very stupid advice we always get, just believe in yourself. I mean, have you ever started believing in yourself because someone told you believe in yourself? And whenever I go to any conferences where I have all these successful women on leadership positions, I very often get this advice from some of them: believe in yourself. What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. And self-confidence is also probably the most misused concept in quasi-psychology. It doesn't also mean anything, because very often women come to psychotherapy to me and they say, I want to be self-confident. And then I ask, self-confident in what area? And then they learn from that first question that they already have self-confidence in some area, but not in some other, which is the definition of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is my belief that I will deliver key messages today to you. So I do have self-efficacy in delivering this presentation, but I don't have self-efficacy in cooking or driving because I don't have experience in these two. So if I put myself in different kinds of experiences, I will develop self-efficacy, many self-efficacies, as many experiences I put myself in, but still, I don't need to believe in myself or be self-confident. It's too abstract. It's too I would say it's a concept which is not easy to really operationalize, okay? So self-efficacy is me believing that I can succeed in a specific goal. I measured, does it help women be better negotiators? I also measured androgyny. Is it helpful for them when they have this androgynous way of behavior? Is it helpful to negotiate more? In this experiment I created where I wanted them to negotiate best outcome for themselves in the game where they were also two men and they had to negotiate best outcome against these two men. Assertiveness, of course, is it helpful for them to be as assertive as possible and to accept themselves unconditionally. So these 4 psychological factors are found in studies and in my practice to be very helpful when it comes to negotiation. If you have all of these, you will be a better negotiator, okay? And it totally makes sense. What I also did is that I had these 2 groups of women. To one group, I said, men are better negotiator. How do you understand that? And then they wrote down their understanding, and many of them were quite critical about this sentence, which is a stereotype. So they had to think about this sentence, they had to question it, dispute it, really critically approach to this sentence. To this other group of women, I didn't say anything. Okay, I just measured these factors. I measured them in the first group as well. But in the first group, I said men are better negotiator. In the second, I didn't. Okay? So before I share with you my results, what do you think? Which one of these 2 groups were better in a negotiation game? The group which was aware of stereotype, where I told them men are better negotiators, or the group where I didn't mention stereotype and I didn't tell them men are better negotiators. In chat or to unmute, whatever feels fine with you.
Where you didn't mention.
Okay, so where I didn't mention, I see the first group in the chat.
Where you did, so they fight it more.
I hear two persons now. Where I mentioned, okay. Group 1.
I would say in second group where you said that and in the second group, right? You didn't say that.
I didn't say. In the second
you
group.
didn't say, and you didn't give them a context.
Okay. So we have different opinions, which is great. Okay, let me share you the result. So it turned out, which was quite appalling for me, that none of these psychological factors really make difference when it comes to negotiation, meaning that women are already very strengthened. They are in a psychological way very empowered. What makes the difference is when they were aware of stereotype. And this is what we call in social psychology, I will show you affect. Women who are aware of gender stereotypes, like the first group, tend to engage in what we call counter-stereotypical behavior, proving their competence through their action. This is also what I call healthy anger. You tell me I can't do something and let me show you. So conscious stereotype awareness, to really be aware of stereotypes, is what helps women, because when women recognize bias, they're more likely to push against it instead of internalizing it. So we don't need more assertive skills. We don't need more self-efficacy. We need more to talk about stereotypes, to become aware of them, to see them, to have these lenses through which we will see unfairness in business area, but also in our private area, to really become aware of stereotypes. Because women who defy stereotypes in leadership roles increase their credibility and pave the way for others. So these findings, as you see, really reinforce the power of awareness and to really become more aware of what happens in business area. And what I learned from my study is that the first problem for all of us, men and women, is not to learn, but to unlearn. For women to unlearn that it's not female to be courageous, and for men to unlearn that it's not man enough to be vulnerable. We need to be more androgynous to really combine these two aspects of our behavior. So yeah, courage, if you ask me, is about challenging these internalized doubts and stepping into our full potential despite all these expectations we get from society. So this is what I have for today, and I'm very open for a discussion or maybe some of your questions, some insights. I hope what I shared with you inspired you to maybe be more self-reflective, yes, but also more aware of stereotypes in your environment.
I'm just thinking, what you were saying led me to thinking about practicing, how we can practice that. Because while you were talking, I was thinking, I remembered how at one point I decided to practice saying no. And it was, I don't know what's your opinion on that, but it's very interesting to just keep saying no or what you really think on little things, because we find ourselves doing like, oh, it's fine, I can do it. Like, it's not a bother, but you kind of, it piles up. So I would just kind of maybe like to hear your reflection on how we can practically work on this saying no.
Yeah, this is a great question, and I will share it if that's okay from my personal experience. This is probably the most important topic for many women, to set boundaries, and we learn that. We can learn that on psychotherapy. We can learn that through these small steps like you mentioned. So for me, it was to start with saying my own opinion in any occasion. Let's start with some small challenges and then to build up on some bigger ones. So for example, here's one thing I did this morning. I was calling cargo to go to this training I did this morning, and there was this really weird smell in the car. And I know that I would used to do something very common. I would just stay there and be with it and hope that I will get to my destination as soon as possible. But this morning I said, you know, there's something is not good here. I feel some kind of smell, and I'm really choosing not to use your services. I hope you will take care of it. I'm really sorry. And I just went out. And I was thinking at that point, and he was, of course, totally surprised. And I was thinking, now he's thinking that I'm this crazy lady. And he did. And he did for sure. But then I was also thinking, what's the bigger price? For me to be there and to really bear with that smell, or to be with the idea that some stranger thinks of me as a crazy lady? And I decided to pay this other price, because you always have to pay some kind of price in being assertive. You just have to choose your own price, because it never goes without paying a price when you are a woman trying to be assertive. I know this may sound as a dumb example, but try to find every situation in your everyday where you can do something a bit different and be ready. And this is probably the most important advice I will give to you. Be ready to pay the price, because we are not assertive, not because we are not courageous enough. We don't want to expose ourselves in unpleasant situations. We don't want to feel unpleasant, frustrated. And frustration is usually the price you have to pay, because it's very uncomfortable to say that to that driver. But I have to pay that price, and also the price of me being perceived as crazy lady.
Good exercise for you. Congrats, Mia, really. Yeah. I heard the same to start being assertive from the supermarket and so on and so on. So good for you.
Yeah, we have to start with small things, because small things may be small, but they're still very uncomfortable. Because assertive is learning how to be fine with feeling uncomfortable. People
I
are
do.
sorry, yes.
Sorry, I do also agree that we somehow unconsciously enslaved to the same stereotypes that we are actually fighting for against. Yeah. And it's a complex. I mean.
Yes. Any other thoughts or maybe questions?
Yes, I have a thought which I actually have it the entire time. I'm not fully comfortable with these divisions, men and women. For example, this imposter syndrome, I've been discussing it and then talking about it with my friend who is a male and suffers from or suffered from that syndrome as well. So it's not, I don't think it's gender um, connected. It can affect
Absolutely.
both sexes, but maybe it is more present with in women. And this, I think, is visible when you are trying to hire someone, and you get CVs, and you get get to interviews, and then you think, okay, most of the women, mostly men apply, at least to the jobs that are offered in my department, and they all seem so confident. Yeah, like they are totally owning it. And then when when they start working, it's not like that at all. And women, and I know from my experience as well, you are looking at something and you think, oh, out of these 10 things, I can do 1 or 2, so I'm no good.
Yes, that's a very true thing. We don't have the same standards on which we will define ourselves as competent enough. And that's really what we call, you have to be, we call that a rule, 3 times better. Like women need to be 3 times better than men on the same level to be perceived as equally good. And when we talk about self-confidence, as I said earlier, it's a very overestimated concept. And let me just explain that through this experiment. They had huge number of engineers, young students who just graduated, and they asked them how self-confident you are. And some of them said, I'm extremely self-confident. That's one group. And the other group who said, well, I'm not that self-confident. And then they introduced them to 25 mathematical concepts from which 3 don't exist. Okay? So experimenters here lied to them. And those, you're probably not surprised, who are extremely self-confident. They said, yeah, I'm very aware of these 3 mathematical concepts. I know what you're talking about. And then those who are not self-confident, they said, I have never heard about these 3 concepts. So one good thing about imposter syndrome is that people who doubt themselves, they're very aware of the things they don't know, which helps them to really learn. And then those people who really overestimate their self-confidence have these blind spots of things they don't know, which really hinders their capacity to learn and to perform. And I agree with you. I don't like these divisions either, but imposter syndrome is gender related. It's much more present in women, but it's also present in men who are introverts. Because when you're a man with introversion, you're also not aligned with gender stereotype about what does it mean to be a man, which is very unfair, because there's so many stigma and so many stereotypes about introverted people, saying that they're not good in presentation and sales. And there is not one scientifically based evidence that says introverts really sell less and present worse. Quite contrary, introverts are those who very often sell better because they know when it's the time to shut up. And extroverts, they always miss the opportunity to shut up. You know, so all these things we talk about are actually stereotypes.
Do you think that multitasking is also kind of gender related?
Of course, for super women with imposter syndrome, it's the way she lives.
So then it's not 3 times, it's like already many times better.
Absolutely, yeah. Any questions or some insights? Or maybe,
as you said, so we can look at the imposter syndrome as something good because it's a possibility to have a growth mindset.
Exactly. What I know for sure is that people who have imposter syndrome are great leaders because they share credits. They will never say, this is me, this is what I did. You know, they have this humble way of leading others, and they're very open to feedback. It can be painful for them to hear negative feedback, but once the pain is gone, they will keep that in mind and they will learn out of it. So I don't necessarily want you to have imposter syndrome, but if you do, I want you to embrace it and to listen to it, because some of the things it tells you are not necessarily bad. Of course, no one knows everything, and we need to learn. But when we fail, it doesn't mean that we are not worth.
Well, thank you. This is a new diagnosis for me.
Yeah, I'm glad.
To deal with.
Yes. Well, listen, imposter syndrome helped us in a way, but of course it gives us some bad things, bad feelings to be precise. So yeah, any questions, any insights, or maybe that keyword that you will bring with you out of this session? That's something I would really like to hear, because many things I shared with you, I wonder what will stick with you after this. So maybe in chat, or if you want to unmute, that's fine also.
I will hopefully, it's open space, so I'm sorry if you hear two voices, but first of all, Mia, really thank you for bringing up this topic that I personally think is not covered enough and not revealed enough and not talked about enough. And we all have it in different phases and in different moments of our lives, and even sometimes daily. And really thank you for this. What will stick with me, and you kind of, even when you know it, but you have to refresh it, the more, what you said, the more you succeed, the higher is imposter syndrome, and it will be even more. So it's, as you grow throughout the career, it's really important to keep that in mind. It will not disappear. It will not be erased, but figuring out how to cope with it, and how to recognize it, I think it's really important. So this one is gonna stick with me for sure.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you.
Okay, so I would say that this courage discussion at the very beginning is something that I will bring with me for this session. And it actually comes from the vulnerability.
Yes.
So I'm in some phase of my life when I need it. So, and thank you, of course, so much for this session.
Thank you, Natasha. Any questions? Any thoughts?
Let me impose myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just for the end, I was thinking that many of us, or probably all of us, are also in the position to help other women kind of lead a lead them or just support them. And I noticed that when I give advice, like I tend to sometimes give advice that I wasn't implementing on my own. Just write that email, just kind of tell them straightforward, put me in CC, whatever. And once you say that and once you give that advice, you have to do it as well. So I think it's kind of two-way road for all of us. But maybe from your experience, what is the best way to support each other and other women?
Yeah, I think what you just shared is extremely important to really lead others the way we lead ourselves, to be good role models if we are in the position of being a leader, but also to encourage each other. And I think the best way to really encourage other women is through sharing authentic and very honest stories. So let me give you this example that I just heard yesterday from a colleague of mine who was part of this huge event, business event, and one panel covered successful stories, female leader stories, okay? And then she told me that after this event, she felt very bad about herself because these women were there on these high positions telling other that basically to be successful, you need to be best looking with at least 3 children, being a CEO for at least few decades. Okay. And then she told me that whole panel was quite opposite from what I expected. So I went home with a very low self-esteem. What I think is that we need successful women who will tell us how difficult it is, how they struggle with their imposter syndrome, how they don't have all the answers. If we really see that successful people are human as well, we will stop really mystifying success as something that belongs to some of us. So this is basically my mission as well, because from the angle of some evidence-based, you would say that I'm very successful, but I know that what helps really others and what helps me is to embrace my imposter syndrome as part of my insecurity. And then it helps others to understand that you can be insecure and do your thing and not just wait to become this best version of yourself and then you start doing your thing, because it may never come. So that's how I think we can encourage each other to really share vulnerabilities, to be open, and not to talk about success like some rocket science.
Thank you. We'll quote you. I will for sure.
I sound like a motivational speaker.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Mia, for today's session. And on that, what you mentioned and what Nevena mentioned, I would like just to share one example of that I had a situation that I'm looking for a job. Like I would like to change something, and I had a situation to speak with the GM of one big company here, woman. And she told me, hey, I'm going to share your CV with a group of other CEOs. It is a group of like 15 women that are in a group where we share all problems that we have. And we also try to encourage other women to whatever and to help them. So she shared my CV and I was thinking like, okay, she's, general manager and we have like CEOs and other general managers. Nothing will happen. But then I started getting emails like, hey, I got your CV from the person that I do not even know. So I think that is great example, how we can also encourage. And my position is not even close to theirs, but I think it's also that is one great example how we can support each others.
It is any kind of help and support, practical or emotional, is something that we need. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this topic, because it's been with me for a long time, but only now I found myself courageous enough to really speak up about it. So imposter syndrome is, and you never know, it's been just recently something I started to talk about, and it's been there for like forever.
Yeah. I'm just now thinking how there's so many topics that I hope we will cover with you over the time. Hopefully, so many questions left. So thank you. Thank you so much, Mia. I really enjoyed this conversation, and it seems to me that everyone did. So I hope to see you again in our community.
Thank you. I really enjoyed, and you're more than welcome. Call me whenever you want to feel insecure together with me. We can do it.
We will. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you, everyone,
Bye.
for
Thank you.
joining
Bye.
today.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. See you.